When this happened, I was 23 and worked full-time at a pizza shop in my local area. I'm not sure if things were happening before this, but as far as I know, everything started and ended on this one night. My best friend Wiley and I worked the night shifts at this pizza place. It was a small shop with just 3 or 4 tables inside, because we specialized in delivery and takeout. Both Wiley and I got our jobs there while we were in college and just never left. Being in a quiet rural town, the job wasn't too much work. We never had busy days, just a steady flow of orders. On this particular night, there was a light storm outside, and business was slow. There were a few orders here and there, but overall, we didn't have much to do. By 10 p.m., Wiley suggested we start cleaning up the place and maybe even clock out 15 minutes early. I agreed and grabbed some rags to wipe the tables with when the phone at the front desk rang. I picked up after a few rings. "How can we help you today?" I asked, but there was no response. I waited another 5 seconds before putting the phone down and shaking my head. Just a prank call, I thought. I went back to scrubbing the tables, but at the front of the store, I saw a glare coming from the window. There was a car parked a few spots back. I couldn't see too well through the window in the rain, but there was definitely a light on in the car, like a cell phone or something. The pizza shop was on an individual lot with no other cars around, so that was the only reason I noticed them. A moment later, the phone rang again. Wiley was closer, so he picked up this time. I could hear someone's muffled voice coming from the phone, and after a short conversation, Wiley hung up. At the same time, the light in the car turned off, and they drove away. I told Wiley what I saw and how it was a little weird, but he shrugged and said it was just some old man ordering a pizza for delivery. I looked back at the now empty parking lot. It wouldn't make much sense for someone to order a pizza for delivery from right outside the shop, so I figured Wiley was right, and it was nothing. He started making the pizza while I continued cleaning. 10 minutes later, Wiley boxed it up and handed it to me to deliver. I ran through the rain to my car, then pulled up the address on my phone. 11 minutes away. Not too bad. I pulled out and started making my way there. The roads were dead, with nobody out at all. Google Maps took me down to a neighborhood full of large homes, then had me turn down a long driveway that led to a cul-de-sac with 3 more driveways, each leading to a different house. I went down the one Maps told me to, and pulled up next to the home. It was one of those large, expensive houses, but pretty old-looking and not very modern. I parked the car, double-checked the address with the house number, then picked up the pizza and ran up to the front door. "Pizza delivery!" I called out, taking a step back and looking at the front of the house. All of the lights were off. I dialed Wiley and had him call the customer. My phone buzzed a moment later, and Wiley told me that his call went straight to voicemail. Frustrated, I ran back through the rain to my car and got in. I tossed the pizza on the passenger seat and started backing out. This wasn't out of the ordinary, getting fake orders or dead deliveries, but it still annoyed me every time. When I got back, Wiley was cleaning and said there were no more orders, so we were good to finish up and head out. I tossed the pizza in the trash and started helping him. Both of us were in the back cleaning the ovens and wiping the prep counters when a sudden bang came from the front of the building. We looked at each other, then ran to the front. At first we didn't see anything, but then Wiley spotted a small crack on the door. I walked over and opened it, and right outside was a heavy rock, big enough to throw and do some damage with. I looked around, seeing the parking lot was completely empty and nobody was nearby. Both of us were really confused and kind of freaked out. We talked about maybe calling the cops, but neither of us wanted to deal with that right then. To put things in perspective, it was 10 minutes before we were off, and if we called, we'd be there for another hour at least. The crack on the door wasn't too big, not really that noticeable, so we chose to wait and just tell our manager the next day instead. We quickly finished up with the cleaning and left through the back door where our cars were parked. On the drive home, I rethought all the strange things that had happened, and it made me uneasy. I pulled into my driveway and walked inside. It was late, so I knew I had to get to bed soon, but I wanted something to snack on first. I went to the kitchen to see what I had, but before I even opened the pantry, I heard a car splash through the puddles on the street outside my house. From the sound of it, I could tell it was parking. I walked over to my window and peeked outside, seeing a car parked right in front of my driveway. It only took me a second to realize it was the same car I'd seen outside the pizza shop. A rush of anxiety hit me, and I stayed at the window to see what they were doing. The car was still on, but I couldn't see through their window. After a minute of no movement, I took out my phone and called Wiley, telling him that I thought one of the customers followed me home and was parked right outside my house. "Are you serious? You need to call the cops. Something's not right," he said, urging me to hang up and call the police immediately. I don't know why I was so nervous to call the cops, but hearing Wiley say it made me feel better about it. I moved away from the window and dialed 911. The lady on the line said they would have someone on their way and that I should stay hidden and wait. I heard a car door open and close, so I quickly said okay and hung up. Looking back out the window, I saw a man walking up my driveway. He was wearing dark clothes covering his whole body and a hood covering his face. As he approached the house, I closed the curtains by the window and waited. Footsteps came to the front door. Then they continued across the front of the house until they reached the outside of the window and stopped. The sudden silence made the sound of the rain increasingly louder. I felt like I was standing there quietly for minutes before I stepped forward and moved the curtain an inch to the side, just enough to peek through. The man's cold eyes stared back at me. I let go of the curtain, and the man banged on the window. I stood a few feet away, paralyzed with fear, and just as quickly as it started, it ended. There was no more banging, no footsteps, nothing. All that was left was the sound of the raindrops hitting the window. Although I never heard the man leave, he was gone when the police showed up. There was no car or man in sight. I told them all that had happened from the middle of my shift to the end of the night. They looked at me like I was crazy, and part of me felt crazy too. None of it made any sense, and there didn't seem to be any motive for the man to have done what he did. Honestly, because of that, the whole night messed with my head for a while. Going through something as senseless as that really got to me. I'm hoping that by sharing this, someone may be able to help me understand what happened or why the man did what he did. It sounds odd, but even now, when it gets really quiet on rainy days, there's an eerie feeling that brings me back to that night.